morning and welcome. Picker Radio News Hour, Joe and Jason on this Thursday. What a week already. Still got another day. You just never know what's going to happen from day to day, but we've got a lot of things to talk about. Crude oil rallying, kind of not unexpected. Saudi Arabia today reiterating, we're not going to produce more oil, and the bond yields. We are a couple of basis points, really a couple thousandths of a basis points away from having the highest yield on a 10-year note going all the way back to 2007. We'll talk about that. I'm going to agree. Ready for this? It's a shocker to me. I'm going to agree with Jamie Dimon in the next segment. That's right. You heard me right. Double J and Jamie Dimon, we think alike. Our toll-free number, at least on this issue, our toll-free number 800-951-0592, the website at allamericangold.com. And does it matter that the United States received a downgrade from Fitch? We already had been downgraded. Matter of fact, we were downgraded by S&P in 2011. Does it matter? We're hearing people say, it doesn't matter. Jason, let me ask you this. If it doesn't matter, why have the rating agencies? Right? If they don't matter, right, then why the heck are we doing it? Obviously, it does matter, right? And everyone's trying to put that spin on it. But I kind of laugh when we hear that kind of, it doesn't matter. Well, then if that was true, then we wouldn't go through the exercise, would we?
I think the ratings agencies are there to for the fake reason that look, there is some rules that are set, and that the players that make the decisions are going to have consequences if things go the wrong way. And so I think the ratings agencies, Joe, are important because they're the ones that are going to show us what's happening and what's going to happen, but they can't really change what's happening. They can only lead us to a certain direction. So I think when this hit the news, it is important because it's a signal something's getting ready to happen, and you better watch out.
I'm gonna say this to everybody: the people that are saying it, they're not telling you the whole story. The reason why they're saying it doesn't matter is because they know that the rating agencies are lying. Simply put. And why would I say that? Well, do you think the housing bubble would have happened if the rating agencies had been doing their jobs like they say they do? Right? Because anybody with an IQ higher than room temperature would have realized, wait a minute, this guy is a courtesy clerk at Fry's, and yet somehow he's able to buy a home on one of these liar loans, right? This guy is,
right.
You see what I'm saying, right? Hey, this guy owns 3 homes, and yet he makes $20 an hour, right? These types of things, if the rating agencies were actually doing their job, not only would the U.S. not be AAA, we wouldn't be AA plus. And I got news for you. Most of the ratings are completely overblown, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next segment. Like
Joe,
I said,
what would you rate? What would you rate?
Diamond.
What would you rate American debt at? What would you put on it? I would do a BBB or an A. And the only reason it'd be that high is because I think U.S. debt's probably just better than a lot of other countries' debt, just by comparison.
Yeah,
but where would you put it?
I wouldn't be in the B's. I wouldn't be in the B's. It would be somewhere in the A's. Would it be A plus, AA minus? And people are like, gosh, what are you guys talking about? Like, this is, A is everyone, because listen, they got you trained like in school. Well, A means good. Any A means good, right? AAA, AA plus, AA minus, A plus, right? It's still A, not really. That's not really not how it works. And the only reason why they get that number, that letter, I say number, the only reason why they would get that letter is because two things. Number one, we've got a printing press, right? So we can obviously print the money, right, if we want to. Now, it may not be worth crap, but we can do it as long as Congress continues to vote to increase the debt ceiling, right? We can do it. And then the other one is the fact that still today, the dollar is the most widely used currency in the world. So that counts for something, Jason, right? That you get points for that.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I think Joe explained it pretty well. If you're triple B, in reality, if you're looking at school grades, that would be a D, because triple A is A, double A is B, triple A is C, and triple B would be D. So that's I think that's the right way.
Triple B is more like, in my opinion, triple B is more like in the C range if you're doing letter grades. When you get down to like B, now you're in the D's, right? Yep. And then of course anything lower than that, you're junk, right? You're an F. But we did get jobless claims, so let's focus on that, because when we get back, I want to agree with Jamie Dimon. I'm excited to do it because I don't do it very often. First time jobless claims, pretty flat. 227,000 unadjusted claims, even lower than that. So again, at least in the layoff scenario, we still haven't seen any mass layoffs yet. When we get back, what did Jamie Dimon say, and why am I going to agree with him? That's all coming up. Don't touch that dial. Eight 800-951-0592. Joe and Jason, Patriot Radio News Hour. A quick look in at the markets. A tough day yesterday. Continuing somewhat today. Not as bad today. The Dow's down 100 points. The S&P's down 13. The NASDAQ is only down about 10 points. Of course, yesterday it suffered some pretty steep declines. The 10-year note, 418. If we crest 422, that will be the highest yield on a 10-year note going all the way back to 2007. Crude oil, man, I hate to see it too. Up $1.30 right now, back above 80. Matter of fact, closing in on $81 as Saudi Arabia today reaffirmed that it will not be boosting oil production. Gold is flat today. Well, depending on where you look. In London, it's up. New York, it's flat. 1,936. Silver, $23.75. And if you're sitting there wondering, what do I do? I'm not sure what to do. I'm nervous about where I have my money parked. Check out YRefi, because it's not correlated to the stock market, not correlated to the Federal Reserve. You decide the time frame, anywhere from 1 to 5 years. The longer you go, the higher the yield. But let's just say you're just like, you know what, I want to wait a year. This doesn't look good to me. I want to take the year and just wait and let me see. Is this crash that Double J's talking about, is it really going to come? Right? Is it going to come, or is it going to be a soft landing? Let me take a year. Let me take a time out for a year. You get 6.75%. It's a pretty good time out. Or 6.25, sorry. 6.25%. 5 years, it's 10.25. And, of course, every year in between it goes up a point. Right? 2 years, 7.25, et cetera, et cetera. And again, the way these markets are looking, not a bad idea to take some of it. I'm not going to take it all, put it in there, but take some of that. Got to have at least 50,000. Just check it out. InvestYRefi.com. That's the word invest, the letter Y, REFY.com. Or just call them at 888-YRefi24. Tell them Joe and Jason sent you. And it's a really good alternative because, Jason, I think this is kind of where we're at. It's very interesting. I really, truly believe the downgrade from Fitch was very organized. They essentially did it ahead of time. In other words, we don't want to wait for when things are getting bad or have gotten bad and then drop the bomb. Let's do this now while things are good, and then they can get cover, which is exactly what they've gotten, right? All the talking heads out there, oh, well, it doesn't matter, and it's ridiculous, and all these other things that they've had to say about why it doesn't matter.
Well, and the pundits definitely want it to seem like it doesn't matter because, you know, it's saying that things are not as good as they were. I mean, the only reason you downgrade is because the agency's saying it's not as good as it was. And so they want the public that might actually look over at this for a moment. Well, I don't really understand. What does it really mean? And then everybody in the news is like, it's not that big of a deal. It's really, I mean, on what? AA plus versus AAA? I mean, what really? What's the difference?
What really does it matter, right? And to your point, not only are they saying, hey, it's not as good as it was, but we actually think it's going to get worse, because that's what Fitch said.
Right.
Hey, things aren't good. They weren't good in our heavy review. We know since then it's gotten worse, and we think it's going to get worse. Now, Jamie Dimon on TV yesterday talking about the downgrade. It really doesn't matter that much. So, I guess that means it matters, but maybe, according to Jamie Dimon, not that much. Because it's the market, not the rating agencies, that determine borrowing costs. Now, that's true to a certain extent. I mean, look at what's happened since the announcement, right? Yields have shot up. I mean, you got a 2-year note almost yielding 5%, and everything below a 2-year note yielding well over 5%. Of course, the 10-year note, like I said, we're just a whisper away from the highest yields going back to 2007. Now, here's where I start to agree. This is Jamie Dimon on CNBC yesterday. Still, it's ridiculous. And you saw that headline. Jamie Dimon says agency rate cut is ridiculous. It's not really what he said, because this is where I'm going to agree with it. It's ridiculous that other countries have higher credit ratings than the United States when they depend on the stability created by the U.S. and its military. So Jamie Dimon, Jason, saying, hey, if we're at AA plus, everybody else should be lower than that, right? None of these countries should have a higher rating than we do, because most of these countries, like the Eurozone, they technically don't have a printing press anymore, right? Technically. Right, so why would France or Germany be rated higher than us? They've got bad debt to GDP levels. And oh, by the way, if it wasn't for our military, right, they would be a mess.
I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, I think that makes a lot of sense. However, if I just speculate for a moment, I wonder if maybe the other countries have a higher rating, possibly because they hold more gold. maybe America doesn't have the amount of gold they say we have. And it's like, well, things are changing. There's this BRICS thing going on, and America may not be ready. Their debt might not be covered. But other than that, Joe, yeah,
right.
Anybody that depends on the U.S. needs to be rated lower. It makes a lot of sense.
To have them AAA and not America is kind of ridiculous.
It is.
You know what?
Yeah.
He's absolutely right. He's totally right. It is absolutely ridiculous that France or Germany is triple. They're not AAA. They're not even close. And that's the thing. This is why I said the rating agent. People say, well, it doesn't matter that much, because they know. Because the rating agencies get paid by the banks. Right? They're the ones that pay them the check. And if you don't want to say AAA, right, we're going to give our business to somebody else. It's still the most prosperous nation on the planet, according to Jamie Dimon. I don't know if that's true anymore. There's a lot of millionaires and billionaires in China, a lot of millionaires and billionaires in India that may say differently. I don't know. Let's just say that could still be true. But, Jason, it's a lot closer than it used to be if it still's true, right? When we look at it, right? I mean, China is producing more millionaires and billionaires than we are. Now, granted, they got way more people. But, again, I don't know how long we can keep that as our battle cry. It's the most secure nation on the planet. Yeah, I think so. Right? That I don't disagree with. We no one spends more. Look at the Congress just approved just a few dollars under $900 billion for the Department of Defense. So I would hope so.
Yeah, I think Jamie Dimon's right on this also. It's just plain logic, plain sense that if you have a Ponzi scheme, which is what the whole thing is, the head of the Ponzi scheme probably is in the safest position. It's always the guys at the bottom that end up asking for their money, Joe, and it's not theirs. So if everyone else is dependent upon this, in all these other countries, no matter what we say about the dollar going down and de-dollarization, which is happening, all these countries are still dependent upon it. So I don't know all the countries that are AAA, Joe, but yeah, if you're going to downgrade the United States, you probably should minimally have all of the rest playing in the same scheme. And this is why I think the rating agencies, they're sending messages. They don't want to tell you the truth for sure, though, Joe.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
You got to read the tea leaves.
Believe it or not, there's quite a few. There's quite a few AAA rated countries. And when you see the list, you kind of start laughing. So, again, Jamie Dimon's right. It is ridiculous. And it reflects poorly, in my opinion, on the rating agencies. And then the new rallying cry, Jason, is get rid of the debt limit. Get rid of the debt ceiling. That's what they want to do. So think about what Jamie Dimon said about this is where we're at as a nation. We cannot stop and have a debate about how much debt we have. Right? We should stop doing that, right? No more debt ceiling. Just let us keep rolling on. I wonder how big the debt would be if we at least, now granted, a lot of it's political theater. They don't really do anything, right? Well, look at the latest. They said, we'll go to 2025, and nobody cut anything. But at least, I guess, there was the threat of cutting something anyway.
It is a good reason to lower the debt rating, though. That they don't even want to have any semblance of responsibility. I mean, it gives a good reason for lowering the rating.
One of the reasons Fitch gave for lowering was the fact that we keep having this debt. We always now go to the last minute. It used to be the debt ceiling would come up, and they would pass something before we had to use emergency measure. Then it got to, we're going to start using emergency measures, but they would solve it before they ran out of money. Now, the debt ceiling, at least the last 2-3 times, we've gotten all the way to the brink, right? We've gotten all the way to, man, if you don't do something, the Treasury's going to be out of money on Monday. And here it is Thursday, and you still haven't made a deal. So that was one of the reasons that Fitch used. And Jamie Dimon saying, let's just get rid of it, and then that way they can't use it as a reason.
Oh, the whole thing is so bad. The whole thing is so bad, Joe. It's just good. It's good that something happened that maybe woke up a few people to this. It's just there's not enough awake people when it comes to this economic system. But maybe we'll get fortunate and they'll downgrade it again. Maybe we'll get another one, Joe, and then maybe more people will wake up. But you probably, what? It would be a surprise. Maybe they'll listen to Jamie Dimon. And suddenly, all these other countries will start losing their ratings, and then maybe that'll wake up a few more people. But this is why I don't play too much in the paper markets, Joe. It's just a casino.
It really is shocking when you see how much spending, not just from the federal, right, the state, the local governments. I mean, they're like half the economy. They're like half of GDP. It has gotten so overwhelmingly enormous, and we're choking on it now. And again, we don't know the when, right? We don't. I mean, people have been warning about the debt, going back to the 90s, right? Look at free trade, NAFTA and GATT. People warned then. And look at what's happened, right? What are we running? Almost $1 trillion trade deficit now, right? We've seen China emerge. Are they a superpower? Not yet, but they're getting really close, right? They're a whole lot closer. India, right? They're basically China and India, right? I think India is now the third largest. I know they're at least the fifth or the fourth, but they're closing in on being the third largest economy in the world. China's the second largest economy in the world. If you do it in terms of stuff, China's number one. Heck, India may be number two in terms of stuff, right? And by all accounts, over the next couple of decades, both nations will have higher GDP than the United States. How did they get it? Well, we gave it to them, didn't we? Yeah. We're just now, it takes a while. Sometimes it takes decades before the ramifications actually show up. And guess what? The ramifications of all this debt is showing up. (800-951-0592). Joe and Jason here on this Thursday. The two best items on the board. It's not even close. It really isn't. $10 liberties. And they've been the leader, right? When we talk about pre-1933 gold for the last really several years, they've kind of been the price point leader. The 20 started to fall in line, and then yesterday, crazy, right? Gold was down. It wasn't down a ton yesterday, $7 or $8, but it was down pretty big the day before. $20 gold pieces jumped back up, right? And that's kind of unusual. But the $10 liberties, they're the best buy on the table, $1,070. And you're like two $10 liberties, and you're buying it for essentially $200 over spot. And that's dirt cheap especially when you think about, spot's almost $1,940. That's really inexpensive. That is what I would consider to be below market premiums. In other words, the $10 Liberty has what I would call a negative market premium right now at $1,070. Add to that portfolio, you're paying what I think it's like $55 less than a 20, and really right now I'm holding my 20 pricing where it is and ignoring the price increase, but really you're back to like $70, $75, two 20s or two 10s, $70, $75 less than a 20 at $1,040. And then Jason, those silver dimes at $95. You said it yesterday. That puts silver dimes below $2, which, I mean, guys, you did a commercial years ago. What? 2-3 years ago about, hey, the silver dimes well over $2. And it is well over $2 everywhere else, just not here. At $95 a roll, that is government hallmark silver, that close to spot. Those are the two best deals, and it's not close.
Yeah, I had some new, we get new customers, people that are buying for the first time, and I had one of those come in yesterday, and they're, the husband wants to buy, but the wife doesn't understand. So we sit down, and I set an appointment, and we have a consultation, and then talk to him about gold and the things that we talk about in the air, and I get a little more in depth, and then the wife is like, okay, I get this. I totally understand. This is great. And then they want to buy some, and they had about $2,000, and they're like, well, what should we buy? I was like, well, buy what you want. But I started looking. I looked at our charts. Well, we have $10 liberties at $10.70. You can buy two of those at $21.40, and they're like, that's it. Boom, two 10s for for 21.40 is a super great price. And then the dimes, less than $2 per dime. A roll of dimes at $95. I didn't think we would ever sell a roll of silver dimes for less than $100 ever again. So pretty good. Here's the thing: silver could drop in price, and the price on these silver dimes per roll may never get to $95 anyways. So you're kind of in a pretty sweet spot when it comes to buying the dimes. I know we finally got action on people buying the dimes. For whatever reason, Joe, people were kind of looking at it and thinking about it, and then yesterday finally people were like, oh, wait a minute, it's time to buy dimes. And so the fact that we still have them at this price means you really should jump on while it's at this price point.
Well, and again, so just let me give you a quick update. I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to forget to mention. So we're down to the last bag of dimes at this price. So that's about 200 rolls. So we've got about 200 rolls of dimes left at the $95 price, and we've got a fairly good amount of $10 liberties at the 1,070 price point at 800 951 0592. And one of the guys, Jason, that I've been kind of paying a little more attention to is over at QTR Finance. Lawrence Leopard is his name. He does a lot of good research, and he has one of those newsletters, and I follow it, and I've been following it a little more lately because he seems to have a really good feel for the Federal Reserve and what they do with their balance sheet. And again, because they play games, we never know everything that they're doing. But he came out in his most recent letter and said that he feels like the Federal Reserve, and right now they're in quantitative tightening, says that is going to come to an end, and that talked about the U.S. deficits projecting a $2.25 trillion federal deficit. Obviously, when we think about last year, 2022, that 1.4 trillion, 1.3, 1.4 trillion. Jason, that's it. That's, like I said, that's more than a 50% increase. But then he went on to say that the budget deficit for, take the last 4 months. In 2022, the same 4 months, so go back and you're talking April, May, June, July, the debt was only $166 billion, and that was for 2022. It jumped to $701 billion this year. So you're like, man, look how fast all of a sudden this is happening. He's anticipating that in 2024, this is one of the first ones for debt level 2024. I've been saying I think it's going to be $3 trillion-ish, right? I don't think we're going to be at $4 trillion unless something goes bad. Right now, he's saying $2.9 trillion is going to be the number for the deficits for 2024, which starts October 1. I mean, Jason, that's within earshot of the highest ever, which was when we shut down everything during COVID.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, yeah, I think this guy's got a good beat on it. I mean, it's always good to try to figure out what the Fed's doing with that balance sheet because there's so many ways that can go, right, Joe? Because they do section it off from the national debt, even though it could be, added on like it's what you like to do. So, it's always good to have someone's view on what's going on with that balance sheet because I don't know. We don't know how much the world's going to change in the future, and that balance sheet could be a pretty bad situation depending on how things change, Joe.
Well, and again, so this is what he's saying. Because of this, because of the amount of interest, because of the debt, and the fact that the banks, they've only got, let's say, somewhere around anywhere between 1.14 to 1.5 trillion dollars left to soak up. He's saying the Federal Reserve's balance sheet is getting ready to start going higher again. I'll tell you how high when we get back. $800-951-0592, $10 Liberties, 1,070 when you want to stay private, when you want to be able to buy gold, that you can buy it, sell it, trade it, not worry about 1099s, have it be classified as collectible. Remember when the government confiscated gold in 1933? That was the only gold you could keep. Then it was illegal to own any type of bullion. You couldn't do it. It wasn't allowed for almost 40 years. Then you think about the digital currency and the things that everybody knows is going to happen sooner or later. You don't give power like this to bankers and the government and expect them not to use it. They're going to use it. So having barterable gold and silver is going to be crucial. And no better way to get some barterable silver than picking up these dime rolls at $95. So we've got two great items on the gold side. The half-ounce $10 Liberty at $1,070. On the silver side, a roll of 50 silver dimes at $95 at 800-951-0592. Now, let me connect the dots for you. Because really, yeah, Fitch talked about the debt limit. They did. Right? And they talked about the growing debt problem. Right? They did that as well. And they talked about the supply and the ever-growing supply of Treasury bills. And then they said, we expect this to get worse. And they really were talking about the immediate future. Right? This wasn't, hey, we expect it to get worse 3 years from now. No. We expect it to start getting from now for the next 3 years. Well, what did they mean? Well, one of the big things, and Jason has really been on this from early on, and it's now finally coming into focus. So the banks had a surplus of cash that they would leave at the Federal Reserve in what we'd call the overnight repos. Because the Fed would pay them some money. And they give them a little bit of interest for doing it. It got up to $2.5 trillion every night. And as a Leopard pointed out, hey, just in the last 4 months, almost a $600 billion increase in the amount of debt. And what's so funny, Jason, is over the last 6 months, this $2.5 trillion has fallen to like 1.8, 1.7. We don't have an updated number yet, but with the announcement over the last 2 days from the Treasury, it looks like we could see this reverse repos fall down to $1 trillion or less before the end of the year and completely be wiped out early in 2024. And I think this is what Fitch is warning about. Hey, when that pool of money goes away, when that's gone, that's when things really get ugly. Because right now what's happening is the banks they're the primary dealers. They got to take that excess money and buy the Treasury market. They got to go to these auctions and buy the debt because China's selling, Japan is selling, the Federal Reserve is selling. And I think, Jason, at that point, with the increase in debt, with the banks running out of money at the reverse repos, you're going to see the Federal Reserve have to reverse course and start quantitative easing all over again, even without rates at zero. Because remember how it used to go. First we bring the rates to zero, then we do quantitative easing. I don't think that's going to be the case this time. Rates are going to stay high, And according to Larry Lepper, he goes, don't be surprised to see the Fed's balance sheet hit $20 trillion. $20 trillion. It's incredible to think about it, but very possible. I mean, it got to 9 already, right?
I think it's probable, Joe. I think it's probable in a higher rate cycle, and you start printing money because, chaos is happening. Who's going to buy it? The Fed is the one that can buy it because they don't actually have to use any assets to accumulate. So a 20 trillion Fed balance sheet, that seems very likely if they're going to have some above board accounting of the money being spent. So yeah, the reverse repo was just extra. I mean, really all the Fed has to do to keep the money in the reverse repo facility is raise their rates higher than their in that facility, higher than their current rate, which is around 5.5. So they control the timing of liquidating the cash out of there for investors to pull the cash from there and try to earn better interest or better rates somewhere else. The Fed can drop the interest rate down to 2% or something and completely liquidate that immediately. So it sure seems like this really gives them control over the timing of the downfall that's happening. As we said on the Half Empty Cup of Joe, we didn't get to mention on this show, the inverted yield curve is at 12 months. And this is the third longest it's taken for a recession to take place after the yield curve. So these things are falling into place in a very timed event. Because let's face it, all the big wigs are going to want to take advantage of this when things go down.
So let's just highlight this really quickly, what Jason just said. So the two other times the yield curve was this inverted for this long was the '08 crash and the Great Depression. We are really just 2 months away from taking out the '08 crash. And 4 months after that, taking out the Great Depression. And we know, right, every bubble that bursts seems to be bigger than the other one. And that timing kind of fits. That takes us, to the end of 2023, early 2024. Does that when it happens? The reverse repo's out of money. All of a sudden, the inverted yield curve and the big blow up? Maybe. Be prepared before that final segment coming up. Final segment, Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason on this Thursday. The special today, $10 Liberties, all the way down at 1,070. And of course, the rolls of silver dimes, 50 silver dimes below the $2 threshold, 50 silver dimes for just $95 at 800 951 0592. Continue to add because, Jason, it looks like the announcement out of Fitch, because it was interesting. Why do it now? Right? And I was like, I think this thing is planned. This whole thing was planned. Because when you look at, and it's always follow the money. The banks are burning through that excess cash that was in those reverse repos. The Treasury just said, man, the bazooka's out. We've got to increase the debts. The amount we've got to sell, which means that the reverse repo liquidity is going to be drained even faster. And we have the inverted yield curve, the third longest in history. So based on that math, like I said, I think the next crash will be worse than '08. So we need to pass '08. So we go through August, September, right? We pass '08. Now it's the second longest, only to the Great Depression, right? Then you go and do October, November, December, January, and all of a sudden we're at Great Depression levels, right? In February we pass it. That's about the time we think the reverse repo money runs out. And then at that point, Jason, I think that's when the big problem hits. That's when the real hurricane hits, when everybody says, well, we haven't really felt the effects of all these rate hikes yet. What did they mean by that? I think this is what they meant. Well, we had all these trillions of dollars saved up. And so we've kept you from feeling the effects until we run out of that. And this is why we're seeing that 10-year note, right? It creeps, creeping higher, creeping higher, creeping higher. And then when it runs out, right, all bets are off the table.
Right, when the reverse repo money runs out, Joe, I mean, this is probably why the rate increases happened so quickly in 2022 and 2023. That money got put in there, okay? And can you imagine if this $2.5 trillion was floating around in 2021 and 2022? Instead, it got put in there, and it didn't get into the market. So I think the Fed sheepishly is understanding that, hey, we don't want this to go floating around in the economy, right, all at once, because inflation will come back a lot, fast. So as this 2.5 trillion bleeds into the markets, they probably don't know how much inflative problems this could cause, which is why I think they set this up, they're trying to slowly get the inflation, all this extra cash out. And so I think the reverse repo could be empty by the end of the year, Joe. I think it could be empty there. And then 2024 is going to be a wait and see situation with the rates frozen where they're at. So we'll see. But if that money hits the markets a little too hard and we start getting really bad inflation, and the markets start to fail all at once, then what your guy said that you were talking about, all this stuff, and 20 trillion in the Fed's balance sheet, all this stuff looks like next year, Joe.
Man, and again, I hope Jason's wrong, right? But the problem is, what you're going to be wrong by 30 days, 60 days, right? That's the problem. Get prepared now. Do it ahead of time. 800-951-0592. Jason and I, we're coming right back with the half